Everyone. My name is Rebecca Lewis. I'm the Scotland Northern Ireland manager for Buglife. So nice to see everybody today. I'm really looking forward to sitting back and hearing some of the presentations from a great lineup of speakers. I'm going to start us off just by sharing a few slides. Just give me 2 seconds. Okay, just give me the thumbs up that you can see the slide there.
We can see it.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Okay, I'm just going to, in front of you, you've got the session plan for the day. So again, my name is Rebecca. I'm just going to do a very brief introduction. I'm not the person you came to listen to today. I'll then be passing over to our Kate O'Leary from Buglife, who's going to be talking us through beelines and managing green spaces for pollinators in Northern Ireland. Then at 2:30, I'll be handing over to Dr. Una Fitzpatrick from the National Biodiversity Data Centre, who's going to talk us through the All-Ireland Pollinator Plan. And then back to Buglife with Hannah Fullerton, our Conservation Officer based in Northern Ireland, who's going to talk us through Get Belfast Buzzing. And then last but not least, we're going to hand over to Rachel Bain from Derry City and Strabane District Council. And she's going to talk through the work that's been done in Derry City and Strabane District through the Pollinator Plan and the fabulously titled Don't Mow, Let It Grow. We'll then stop for a bit of a Q&A session. So please remember to put all of your questions in the chat. There's a Q&A panel and you'll be able to go through them at the end and ask your questions. So I'm just going to start with a little introduction to Buglife. For those who don't know, we are the Invertebrate Conservation Trust, and we are the only organisation dedicated to the conservation of all invertebrates and their habitats. So our fantastic team of conservation officers work across both terrestrial and freshwater landscapes, and our main programmes and activities include beelines, which we're going to talk a bit more about today. We also have some species recovery projects that focus efforts on individual species that are more in need. We also have a large-scale project on important invertebrate areas, excuse me, where it's a landscape project that we have mapped out all of the areas important for an invertebrates across the UK. If you want to find out more, you can go and have a look on our website. We also have projects focusing on site protection, looking after our more vulnerable areas. And we have a fantastic advocacy and policy team that makes sure that there's a strong voice for invertebrates. If you want to find more about particular campaigns or manifestos, we've got one on light pollution at the moment. Again, please look at the website. And across all of our projects, we have outreach and engagement, which is an important part, communicating the work that we're doing and involving the public. Our mission through all of our work is to make room for invertebrates. The most important areas for invertebrates in Britain are identified, they're recognised, they're understood and protected. We also want to make it safe for invertebrates, so considering things like invasive non-native species, pesticides, light pollution, pharmaceutical pollution. And importantly as well, we want to make it friendlier for invertebrates. We want a positive public profile, and the only way to get this is to make sure that invertebrates are better understood. So that's a little bit about our work, but today we're going to talk a little bit about how we can tie things together. So we're going to go through a little bit about the legislation and the policy. Again, we're going to have some literature on the website that is going to go into this in more detail. So I'm just going to run through the kind of main headlines very quickly here. So starting at the top, we have the Environment Act of 2021. This is making provisions about targets, plans and policies for improving the natural environment and the requirement for the creation of environmental improvement plans. The environmental improvement plans are a statutory duty under Schedule 2 of the above Act, supports rebuilding resilient ecosystems and reconnecting communities with nature. It outlines 6 strategic environmental outcomes, with B lines directly addressing 2 of these: SEO3, creating thriving connected wildlife, and SEO2, developing a healthy, accessible environment for all. The strategic objectives of this EIP are excellent air, water and land quality, healthy and accessible environment and landscapes. The Environmental Improvement Plan aims to link each set of proposed actions and targets to improve our environment and to link to the relevant strategic drivers that underpin environmental work. We then have the Wildlife and Natural Environment Act of 2011, or the WAIN Act for short, requires public bodies to support biodiversity conservation while carrying out these functions. Local authorities must consider the species and habitats listed in Section 3 when making policies or decisions. We have the Conservation Regulations of 1995 in Northern Ireland. So these regulations require development plans to promote the management of key landscape features such as rivers, hedgerows, ponds and woods, which support wildlife movement and genetic diversity. These regulations implement the EU Habitats Directive in Northern Ireland. On to the Climate Change Act. Proposals and policies under Section 29 shall, as far as practical, support nature-based projects that enhance biodiversity, protect and restore ecosystems. The Act requires the development and publication of the climate action plans, which along with greenhouse gas, air quality targets, soil quality and biodiversity targets. The Nature Conservation and Amenity Lands Order 1985 provides powers to establish and manage nature reserves, especially on derelict lands, to protect wildlife and make them accessible to public. B-lines can improve connections with these sites and support efforts to acquire, manage, and open them up for public enjoyment. And last, but absolutely not least, is our All Ireland Pollinator Plan, which you're going to find out more about today. So the All Ireland Pollinator Plan for 2021 to 25 is a 5-year roadmap that aims to help bees, other pollinated insects, and our wider biodiversity. So I will leave that there to pass on to our speakers for the day. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I would like to invite Kate O'Leary. Thank you, Kate.
Perfect, thank you, Becky. So I think that should be sharing now.
That's great, thanks.
It's perfect, thank you. Yeah, so hello, I'm Kate and I'm a conservation officer with Buglife in Scotland. So today I'm going to be talking about the importance of pollinators, overview. So today I'll be talking about the importance of pollinators, some of the main issues faced by pollinators, how beelines can be a solution for these. Then I'll get into our new guidance resources and where they can be found. And then from these, we have listed 6 key actions local authorities can take to help support pollinators. So to start with the broadly with the importance of invertebrates. So of course, invertebrates all have their own intrinsic value. They also provide a lot of health and well-being benefits to us. I think everyone appreciates seeing their first bumblebee of the year, seeing a butterfly over a meadow, dragonflies over ponds. But apart from this, they perform many essential ecosystem services. So we have things like pollination, we have integrated pest management. So for example, when you have the right balance of ladybirds and aphids, ladybirds can help manage aphid populations. They are the base of a lot of food chains, so provide food for a lot of other animals. And invertebrates like earthworms are super important with nutrient cycling, water use efficiency, and aeration of soil. So then to get into the importance of pollinators. So to start with wild plants, about 8 out of 10 of every wild plant species need insect pollination. Then on to crops. If you're eating a varied diet, about 1 in every 3 mouthfuls of our food is dependent on pollination. There's also a significant monetary value associated with pollinators. So in the UK alone, It's estimated that pollinators contribute 691 million to our economy each year through the pollination of crops, which is hugely significant. And what's worth bearing in mind as well, it's not just honeybees who are carrying out these work. We also have a huge host of wild pollinators that help increase yields, increase crop production stability, and also increase crop quality, which has a bearing on its market value. So when we talk about these wild pollinators, we're talking about at least 4,000 species that are involved in pollination in the UK and Ireland. These 4,000 can be split up into 6 main groups. So firstly, top left, we have our flies. Pictured here is a hoverfly. We have around 270 species of hoverfly, which are significant pollinators in the UK and Ireland. Next up, we have our solitary bees. Pictured here is a mining bee. We have around 250 species that are all important pollinators. We have wasps, we have a potter wasp pictured on the top right. A lot of wasps actually feed on nectar as adults, so are considered pollinators. We have butterflies and moths, bottom left. I think historically we probably underappreciated the value of moths as pollinators, but more and more research has shown just how important they are at pollinating a range of plant species. We have bumblebees, pictured bottom middle. Bumblebees are especially great pollinators in cold weather and can travel quite long distances to feed from flowers. And then finally, we have our beetles, which are bottom right. A lot of adult beetles actually eat pollen as their primary food source, and then a lot of others supplement their diet with pollen. So do a lot of movement between flowers again and will pollinate plants. So despite this clear importance, pollinators and invertebrates in general are experiencing declines at the moment. So I'll now get into some research on invertebrate declines. So to start with, the 2023 State of Nature report found that 33% of invertebrate species studied are declining in distribution. In terms of pollinator declines, recent UK research looking at 353 species of wild bee and hoverfly found that 1/3 of species studied were experiencing declines. Long-term trends in butterfly species have found that 80% of studied species are declining in either abundance, distribution, or both since the 70s. And unfortunately, we have lost 20 species of bee and wasp from the UK in the last century. So some citizen science surveys, which also show similar invertebrate declines. We have Bugs Matter, which we lead on with the Kent Wildlife Trust. And the Bugs Matter study measures insect splats on vehicle number plates as a marker for insect abundance. And this methodology is based on the windscreen phenomenon, which is the idea that years ago we would have found more dead invertebrates on our cars than we do now. It can be done at any time from May to September. So if you'd like to get involved, we'd encourage you to download the app. What these results show is that UK-wide, from 2004 to 2023, there was a 78% decline in flying insects. And we unfortunately don't have data from Northern Ireland for 2004, but from 2021 to 2023, there's a 54% decline in flying insect abundance in Northern Ireland. Obviously, this is just one way of measuring insect abundance, but it does show that there are declines happening. And then finally, we have a study from Germany as well, just to show that these declines are wide-ranging and widespread. This study showed that even on nature reserves, there was a 75% decline in flying insect abundance over 25 years, which is quite significant. So what is causing these declines? So one of the primary drivers is habitat loss and fragmentation. So in the UK, we have lost 97% of our wildflower-rich habitat since the 1930s. This is roughly an area of 3 million hectares. And this has left much of the remaining habitat fragmented and isolated. We have a lot of untargeted and diffuse delivery, where patches are maybe not being as linked up as well as they could be. We also have some green spaces, which are maybe not being managed quite as well as they could be for nature. So if you look at this photo, for example, there's really not much habitat for pollinating insects at all. So even adding a wildflower border would include some pollinator habitat, but would still keep most of the park open for public use. So what we need to do to better support pollinators is to make the landscapes work better for them. So we can do that through creating permanent and connected wildflower-rich habitat. What's important to bear in mind here is that we create a variety of different habitat types. As we've seen, we have a huge diversity of UK pollinators, So it's important we try and create habitat to support these diverse assemblages. So things like patches of scrub, patches of woodland, meadows will improve insect biodiversity. And we also need to increase the permeability of our landscape. So we need to facilitate invertebrate movement throughout the UK, increasing permeability and allowing for recolonization of sites, and also to support healthier populations. So how we envision carrying this out at Buglife is through beelines. So beelines are a series of 3-kilometre wide corridors that run throughout the UK. So you can see on the map here on the right that they're a landscape scale approach, and we've them mapped out to the entirety. And they're also a very collaborative approach. So we really would encourage everyone to get involved. Anyone can contribute, whether you're at a charity, local authority, business, schools, private landowners. So how we created these, they were mapped around the table, county by county, and were led by data and local expertise. There is an extensive consultation process, and the principle is based on research from the University of Liverpool. So what they suggested was, rather than restoring, it's more effective to restore stepping stones of habitat within linear corridors rather than diffuse restoration and disconnected blocks. So our guiding principles for beelines, we typically have east to west and north to south corridors, and this is to facilitate movement in all directions. Rather than completely filling the beelines, which would be almost impossible in most scenarios, we're hoping to fill them to 10% and to create habitat stepping stones. We are hoping we can pre-link existing wildflower habitat, particularly larger sites of over 2 hectares, as larger sites have been shown to hold more diverse invertebrate assemblages. And we also want to note that this is important not just for invertebrates and pollinators, but for a whole host of other animals that use grasslands, like our skylarks and our common lizards. So how we're doing on this so far. As of December 2024, we have over 3,600 dots of wildflower-rich habitat on our map, which is equivalent to about 4,600 hectares of wildflower habitat. In Northern Ireland, we have about 45 hectares of wildflower-rich sites across 32 sites. And there's obviously much more wildflower habitat than this in Northern Ireland. So there still is a huge amount of work that is left to be captured on the maps. So we would encourage everyone who's doing any kind of wildflower-rich habitat enhancements to add them to our maps. So if you go to buglife/our-work/beelines, you can zoom in on the map there and you can see where exactly these lines run in your local area. And we would really encourage anyone who's doing any work at all, whether that be a hedgerow, an orchard, a meadow, to add that to our map so we can have a central place where all this work is being captured. And also you can see what other work is being done in your local area. And then onto our new guidance resources. So we have created these 4 key new resources. So number 1, we have benefits of beelines to local authorities in Northern Ireland. And these can illustrate how beelines can help you meet your environmental commitments. We have a resource on managing road verges. We have one on managing parks and green spaces. And then we also have one for community spaces. So we would encourage you to share this with any community groups you're working with, as there's a lot of great information there on how they can help enhance areas for pollinators. You can find all of these on our website, and we will send around links. And there's also some case studies up there too on previous Buglife beelines projects and how they've been carried out. And then from this, you'll see that we've created 6 key actions for local authorities. I'll just give this a quick run through, as some of our next speakers are going to give you more detail on their own experience of managing green spaces for pollinators. But to start with, we would encourage you to check the beelines map and to see where they run through your local authority, and to prioritise wildflower habitat enhancement along our beelines. Additionally, we would encourage you to keep an eye on wildlife sites and nature reserves to make sure they're being maintained in good condition. If possible, review management of green infrastructure and create more flower-rich, pollinator-friendly natural habitats in areas like parks, school grounds, roundabouts. And this will not only benefit pollinators, but also local residents who will have more opportunities to connect with nature, which is becoming harder in some areas these days. We would encourage any local people to manage their gardens and their community green spaces to benefit pollinators and other wildlife. And then finally, if you've not already, we would encourage you to create and adopt a pollinator strategy within your local authority to help support pollinators. So that is me.
Thanks very much, Kate. Excellent presentation. A few things stand out straight away to remind ourselves. I guess it's not just about our pollinators. It also affects both our health and the economy. Also great to highlight the variety of pollinators and not to forget about our wasps and our moths. And many of us will maybe have memories of cleaning off windscreens to earn pocket money as a kid. I was certainly one of them. So yeah, have noticed a big difference with that. So if you're keen to see what your journeys will show up in our Bugs Matter app, please download the app. It's really, really simple to do and can be quite fun. Right, I would like to hand over, just a reminder as well, sorry, to put any questions on our Q&A that you have for the panelists at the end, and we'll make sure to go through them. So I'd like to hand over now to Dr. Una Fitzpatrick from the National Biodiversity Centre, who's going to deliver her presentation on the All-Out Pollinator Plan. Thank you very much.
Oh, thanks, Rebecca. I'll just try to share my screen. You can let me know if this works. Can you see that okay? Perfect. Thank you firstly to Buglife for inviting me today. I'm delighted to be here to chat to you for a wee bit about the All Ireland Pollinator Plan. I work in the National Biodiversity Data Centre and I manage the plan. Before I suppose we get into it, I just want to acknowledge biodiversity loss is a huge problem in Ireland, in Britain, and really everywhere. But it's such a complicated topic that it can be quite difficult to feel empowered to know what to do about that. So what we've been doing in Ireland is using pollinators as a vehicle to sell that wider biodiversity message to audiences. And pollinators are perfect for this. You know, they're an element of biodiversity that people can understand and relate to. You can communicate about them really easily. You can easily monitor changes. And really importantly, when you protect pollinators, that has knock-on benefits for biodiversity generally. Unfortunately, in Ireland, the plight of pollinators is typical of many components of our biodiversity. On the island of Ireland, we've got 102 different bee species. We've got the honeybee, and then we've got 101 wild bees. And of those 101 wild bee species, unfortunately, 1/3 are threatened with extinction from the island. So rare species and difficulties, and you might think, oh, you know, that's awful, but maybe the common ones are doing okay. And unfortunately, that's not the case. So we know from citizen science schemes like the Bumblebee Monitoring Scheme that our common bumblebees are also in a lot of trouble. So that scheme shows that the abundance of our common bumblebees has been declining since we started measuring it in 2012. So if there's a problem, what do you do about it? I think you have to decide if it's important, you know, critically assess it and how serious it is, identify what's causing it. And then you need to come together and collectively agree a positive framework to address it. And that's what the All Ireland Pollinator Plan is about. So we're in the second phase of it now, which is run from 21 to 25, and busy planning for a third phase as we speak. But today, I'm just going to talk to you about where we're at to date. So once you have a plan, I think you need to then identify evidence-based actions to help. You need to communicate them as clearly as you can. You need to work together as much as you can. And then you need to track progress. You know, is what you're doing actually working? Just a wee tiny bit about some of the impact that we have had to date with the Pollinator Plan. So we've delivered the actions in the first plan and we're well on track to deliver them again in the second phase. All councils now across the island have become partners and have agreed to take action to make the land that they manage more pollinator friendly. Lots of parks have become pollinator friendly. Local communities have been amazing. They've really embraced the initiative and made real changes locally to make their local areas more biodiversity friendly. We've completed a research project that worked with farmers to show how all farms, regardless of type or intensity level, can take small actions that will ensure they become more pollinator friendly. We've got a network of business supporters. So these are companies who've committed to taking action on their own sites and to telling us what they're doing. Schools have become pollinator friendly. Really importantly, for me, so many more people are engaging with nature. You know, so we've seen a huge increase in the number of people that are interested in pollinators, bees and moths and hoverflies and submitting that data to us. And also there's an Irish Pollinator Research Network. So this is a network of research across all universities on the island, and they've been instrumental because they're able to do the research that we know we need to help drive the plan and to make sure that it's continually evidence-based. And, you know, thanks to the buy-in right across the whole island, and just, you know, we're so grateful to all the people who have engaged with it. It is regarded as a success story internationally. And that's purely due to, you know, the commitment and the enthusiasm that all the supporters and partners have shown. Big part of the pollinator plan is making resources available. So, you know, it's one thing to say, oh, pollinators are in trouble and we want you to help, unless you actually tell people what it is that you want them to do. So this has been a really important part of the plan, is just identifying what it is that we're asking everyone to do. So we've got lots of these evidence-based actions. So they're all written up in guides. You can see them if you want. They're all freely available on pollinators.ie. And each time, you know, we look at the science, we decide what actions have an evidence base, so we know they will work. And then we work with that sector to make sure that they're realistic and pragmatic, and also that they're communicated in the right way. So we've got lots of these resources available for people. And the idea is that it's about coming together to take action. You know, so this is from the mapping system that we have, where you can go in and, you know, anyone who's helping can go in and say what it is that they're doing. And it is about coming together to take action, you know, and that's very much in line with what Beelines is all about. You know, it's about changing the way the landscape is managed and doing it collectively. Lots of other resources, some of the more complicated actions. You know, there's one there for nocturnal pollinators. I think Kate mentioned how important moths are, and that's absolutely true. So that guide really talks through how important light pollution and things can be. There's also a guide on how to develop meadows in your local community or garden, which I'll say a wee bit more about in a minute. I don't want to go into the detail of the actions, but I do want to make what I think is really important points. You know, if we want to change things for pollinators and for biodiversity, we have to take biodiversity actions, not token greening. You know, we need interconnected networks of habitats, and we seriously need to look at pesticide use. That is going to require transformative change. We need to make sure that we're taking evidence-based actions for biodiversity, not the ones we humans like the best. There's a tendency sometimes when there's a problem, and it's completely understandable, that, you know, you want to throw money at it. And we need to be really careful that we don't do that. You know, we need to stop spending money where the positive impact would have been greater by doing less. Often what nature needs is for us to do less, you know, whether that's mow less, cut less, spray less. So we need to make sure we're doing the right thing. And also, I think it's not about gardening nature. We need to get to a landscape where biodiversity can coexist with minimal human support. That is really challenging, but if we can do it, the benefits to biodiversity, to climate, and to human health and well-being are absolutely enormous. So, been doing this for nearly 10 years now. I'm feeling old, but, you know, it's a good time to kind of reflect and say, well, what is the best way to help pollinators? And to be honest, it's the same thing we knew when we started. What they need are interconnected networks of habitats with native plants, and we need to seriously look at pesticide use. You know, that's it really. So we need more meadows. The Don't Mow Let It Grow approach that Rachel was instrumental in bringing to the island of Ireland. So we need more meadows. We need more hedgerows and native trees. And what's becoming clearer based on research, quite recent research, is particularly for the bumblebees, we need to really make sure that there's enough early spring forage sources for them. So that's at this time of year. You can look at yourselves, you know, wherever you are, you know, you can see bumblebees, you know, they've come out of hibernation, they're trying to establish their nests. There's very little for them to forage on. You know, there's not enough for them to eat, basically. And this is a really critical time. So we do need to look at that early spring time and make sure that there's enough food in the landscape for them. So just for the second half of this talk, I'm going to say a wee bit about my favourite bee. So yeah, there's 101 wild bee species in Ireland. I could probably talk about all 101, to be honest, but I think Buglife might kill me because I'm on the clock here. So I'm just going to tell you about my favourite one, which is this one. It's called the large Carter bee. So it's a bumblebee. So it's gorgeous bumblebee. I like it. Well, I think it's a beautiful insect, but I like it because bumblebees are not at all aggressive. This one has a wee tiny bit of attitude, I think. So they have no interest, obviously, in humans, but it does have a wee bit of attitude. And interestingly, this is the first bee that was ever recorded from Ireland. So it was first recorded in 1884. Now, obviously, bees were here before that, but that just happens to be when the first record was made. And it was made by this man, who's the Reverend Johnson, who was a headmaster in a school in County Armagh. So you can see him there. I don't know if I'd fancy being in his class, but the Reverend Johnson was the first one to record this bee in Ireland. And it's funny when you look back at what he wrote about it at the time. He said, when disturbed during haymaking operations, it's able to take care of itself. So it's which kind of does, resonates with me, because it can look after itself in the bee world. So just look at distribution of this large carder bee. So Ireland is a real stronghold for it. It also occurs in Britain, particularly in Scotland, and then it occurs around the coast of Scandinavia. But the unfortunate thing is that it's in serious decline. So it's vulnerable on the European bee red list. It's also in serious decline here in Ireland, unfortunately. It nests just on or under the surface of the ground, and it will card together moss and grass to cover the nest. And it's also unusual for bumblebees. It's called a doorstep forager, which means that most foraging will take place within about 100 meters of the nest. So that's really low for bumblebees, and you can see how those together might make a wee bit more vulnerable. So it doesn't like to travel far from its nest to feed. So you can imagine how important it is that the whole landscape, provides the resources that it needs. So this is it. And another really unusual and interesting thing I think about it is that you get this unique variety on the Aran Islands, which looks totally different. It's kind of much darker form. So you get this unique variety on the Aran Islands. What's really cool is that this same variety also occurs on the Hebrides and the Shetlands and the Channel Islands and the Scilly Isles, which seems mental when you first think about it. But I think what happened was that after the Ice Age, when the first wave came across from Scandinavia, it was that darker form. And so they've persisted on the islands, whereas they were then followed by the lighter coloured form, which we get mainly on mainland Ireland and Britain. So if we look at what plants the large carder bee prefers, within the National Biodiversity Data Centre, we get lots of records on bees, and quite often people will tell us what it was feeding on, which is really useful. So you can look at all that data and you get a really good picture of the plants that this bee prefers, here on the island of Ireland. So I'll show you the top 10. So the plants that it likes best are knapweed, dandelion, kidney vetch, bird's-foot trefoil, devil's-foot scabious, red clover, vetches, white clover, bramble, and thistle. And if you look at those plants for a wee minute, 9 out of the 10 of them are plants of grassland meadows other than bramble. And, I'm talking about the large carder bee. I could be talking about any pollinator. Grasslands are so important for them because they provide this really high quality, diverse nutrition throughout their life cycle. So, you can imagine that, a native meadow, you get things like dandelion popping up first, and then they're followed by the bird's foot trefoil and maybe some of the vetches. Then you get the clovers coming in. Then later on in the season, you start seeing things like knapweed and thistle, and usually ending up with devil's foot scabious. So they provide this amazing nutrition right throughout the season, which is why they're so important. And it's so important that we have more of these meadows, in our landscape. And really, I'm using Rachel's phrase because Rachel coined the whole "don't mow, let it grow," and it really has spread across the whole island now. And fair play to Rachel for all that she did to make this happen. Rachel Bain, who's going to talk later on. So don't mow, let it grow. It really is, it's the best and probably the cheapest way to provide more food for pollinators. I like this picture because it shows you lots of different mowing regimes in there. Okay, so you've got this one that's cut regularly. You've got here cut less frequently, usually about once a month. That's providing food. Cut once a year, that provides food and shelter. And then there's often areas that are left uncut entirely, and they also provide food and shelter. Now, you can imagine yourself, if you're a bee, you're not down with that, but you love a bit of those other three, and it shows how easy it is to help. And of course, if you want these areas of grass to become more flower rich on their own, you do need to take the cuttings away. So I always recommend when you're cutting your grass, whether you're cutting once a month or you're cutting once a year, make sure to remove the cuttings so that the soil fertility will gradually be reduced and give the wildflowers a chance to grow. Rachel, Bain and I have developed a lot of resources actually over the years on this, and on pollinators.ie we've got various videos that we developed just to provide a wee bit of advice around this and to help people who might be interested in doing it. So it's this that they want, that's what they absolutely love. It's not this, and we do see a tendency, for some people to think, and it's completely understandable and it's always completely well-intentioned, but sometimes people will think, okay, the best thing for me to do to help is, spend money, and I need to do something like that. And sometimes what people will do is that they'll spray an area with herbicide, and then they'll buy a commercial seed mix and they'll put it down. That's not providing the nutrition that bees want. There's also a risk of bringing in invasive species and the like. So really, we strongly encourage people not to do that, but to just go down the don't mow, let it grow, just reduce mowing, let these flowers come back naturally. That is what the bees want. And I'm going to just tell a wee tiny story. Buglife, don't kill me if I go over time. But I always picture bees themselves when I'm thinking about this. And with bees, their sight's not as accurate as ours, so they're not able to see as clearly as we can. But what they can do is they can see moving images much better. So it's called a flicker fusion frequency. So bees have a higher one than we do as humans. So you can imagine, like, if you're watching a video, and you speed it up, there'll come a point where it gets too fast, you can't see it anymore. Bees could speed it up much more and still be able to see it. And what that lets them do is when they're flying over the landscape, they're able to pick out these patches of colour where there's flowers growing in blocks together. So they can pick those out really easily. So these meadow habitats are so important. They're flying over, they're able to see these blocks of colour and know straight away, that that's a food source for them. And bees also have a much better sense of smell than us. So it's about 100 times better than ours is. And I don't know if you've ever smelled clover in summer, but it's amazing. But imagine being able to smell that 100 times more. So again, you can see in this picture here on the bottom, we've got these patches of yellow birdsfoot trefoil and patches of pink clover that are also leaving, a scent. So bees are able to fly across the landscape and really clearly pick up what it is that they need. That doesn't happen with those mixes. That's a completely different scenario. So it's this native, natural regeneration that they want, and that's what they need. Just again, come back briefly to the large carder bee. I'm showing you records here within the last decade, and you might be thinking, why are you showing me this? It doesn't really occur very broadly in Northern Ireland. And, I'm showing you because it's my favourite bee. I could be talking about any bee. What I'm saying applies to any of our pollinators. It's a scene picture. I'm just using this one because I like it so much. But with the large carder bee, what we've been doing is trying to encourage people to get behind it, particularly communities who have it in their local area, to really adopt it, embrace it, and try and make changes to make their local area more pollinator friendly, to give this bee a fighting chance at survival. And we've had a huge amount of success with that. So lots of communities have really embraced that. We've got a guideline document which has got 10 steps to protect the large carder bee. The main step is just more of these don't mow, let it grow meadows, but there are a whole series of things you can do. And we've really been encouraging communities to do that. And when they do, you can see the bee responding really quickly. I just want to show you a quick example of one that I'm very familiar with. So I live in Waterford now, and this is a place called Tremor, and the large carder bee, my favourite, I always knew it was in the dunes. So when I came to live in Waterford, and I was working in the centre, and I set up another scheme called the Bumblebee Monitoring Scheme, where we ask people to walk fixed route once a month and record the number of bumblebees that they see. And we use that to assess what changes are happening with bumblebees. So I set up a walk down here at Tremor because I wanted to see what was happening with the large carder bee. So I did set up this walk. The first year I did it, back in 2012, there were 36 individuals of the large carder bee. The average since then is 5. So you can see what a lot of trouble it's in. What then happened in Tremor was that the council and the local community, the Tremor Eco Group, they decided to make this area, which was an old landfill site, into a meadow. And then this area here, which was just shortly mowing grass, they decided to make that into a lawn flowering meadow. So instead of mowing this every 2 weeks, now they cut it once a year, remove the cuttings, and it's developed into the most beautiful meadow. This only happened in 2021. So what happened was, okay, 2021, we set this up, I'll see if it's having any impact. So I set up another walk through this new meadow. I walked for the first time in 2022, and straight away there were 10 individuals of the large carder bee. The next year there were 17. So a simple action just to change the landscape, to create these corridors that contribute to things like beelines, and the impact is immediate for a bee that's really threatened like this particular one. So straight away, you say that meadow is supporting a large carder bee, but also another bee that's vulnerable on the European bee red list, a little sultry bee called the northern Caletes. Last year, the first bee orchid appeared. So again, all that they did was decide to just change the way that they were mowing. You know, they reduced mowing to once a year, and it's amazing things happened for biodiversity. I'll not go into this, but we have seen since the pollinator plan a big increase in the number of bee orchid records that we get within the centre. That's because people are mowing less, you know, they're not managing the landscape as tightly as they might have. And if bee orchids are reappearing, so are lots and lots of other less conspicuous elements of our biodiversity. And again, you know, this is Tremor, so we know now for the first time it occurs, the large carder bee occurs out of the dunes. Remember I said it's a doorstep forager, so it can't travel too far to find food, so it needs to have these stepping stones. So it can travel this far, but when you look at the town, you know, there's lots of other areas that would be good. And they sometimes ask me, well, what do we do next? And I say, you need to focus on creating corridors. You know, it is the corridors of meadows, you know, it's hedgerows. It's exactly the concept that we're talking about today with beelines. We have developed this guide to help people if they want to create these naturally regenerated meadows in their communities and gardens. So people right across the island, I can see lots of people on the call today who've helped with this. And thank you to everyone. So, but that resource is there if people want to have a look at it. And it's fantastic just to end, you know, it's so nice to see these meadows being brought back again, right from the amazing semi-natural grasslands and hay meadows that have been here for decades, you know, right to people who are starting on this journey through simple things like No Mow May, you know, communities who are doing it, or councils who are making these huge changes. And I know Rachel Bain is going to talk about what's happening in Derry and Strabane, but you know, I just want to, I was looking at this the other day and I thought I'll just pull it into this talk. It's from South Dublin County Council. And in 2024, they were managing 175 hectares of long flowering meadows cut once a year and 20 hectares of short flowering meadows, which are cut once a month. So, you know, that's a hugely positive thing for biodiversity, and also a hugely positive thing for climate. So they've worked out, you know, the prevention of tons of carbon emissions, which is also substantial. So just to finish, you know, it is true that lots of small actions taken together can begin to solve big problems. You know, we've done a lot together, but we need to do more moving forward. I want to, you know, thank Buglife, who've been very supportive of the All Ireland Pollinator Plan right from the very start. And thank you again for inviting me to talk today. And I'm happy to take questions at the end when we get to that. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Una. There's a lot to that, and some of the big the big messages. I think you started with saying being able to relate, communicate, and be able to monitor change. All the things that our invertebrates can help us do, but getting that message out there, a 300% increase in people recording wild bees is absolutely fantastic. But also the idea that what we're trying to get to is a place where, as you said, biodiversity can coexist without human support. So we absolutely need more bees with attitude. But yeah, and maybe mow less to impress, you know. But thank you so much. Absolutely brilliant presentation. And yes, please do put your questions in the chat for Una, who will be here at the end to answer them. Fantastic. Okay, I will now like to hand over to Hannah Fullerton from Buglife, who's going to talk about our Belfast buzzing project. Hannah, if you'd like to share your slides, it'd be great. Thank you.
There we go. Hopefully that can be seen. So as you heard, yes, I'm Hannah Fullerton. I'm the Conservation Officer for Buglife in Northern Ireland. And so I was in charge of our own beelines project in Belfast called Belfast's Buzzing. So this had the goal of improving green areas around Belfast for the invertebrates, pollinators in particular. And there was also an educational side, and that was going into schools and community groups to try and change people's perceptions on invertebrates. which I do think is very important, because whenever people go, ooh, you know, bugs disgusting, they're less likely to be inclined to make steps towards helping them. But whenever you go in and show them, oh, actually, these are really exciting things, you know, all the bright colors and shapes and sizes and all their little funny habits, then you get people, you know, excited to try and help pollinators. So, and that was my job in it. So yes, the UK has lost over 97% of its wildflower grasslands since the 1940s, which has contributed to major declines in the pollinators. If there's a desert, if they can't get nectar to eat, then there's no hope for them at all. So Buglife has many of these beeline projects across the UK, through the beelines, which we have heard about in other presentations. And it can be as simple as simply setting up a few potted plants in your garden, for example, to provide additional forage in the more built-up areas, because that's the places where pollinators, they'll fly in and just see absolutely nothing, just concrete, and they don't know what to do. So this is trying to combat that. So Belfast Buzzing was the first beelines project in Northern Ireland, which was very exciting. Got to create connections with, say, the All Ireland Pollinator Plan and others like the National Trust as well, and Belfast City Council. So it was a great opportunity to get in and start getting the little dots put on the map of all the different places where people were helping out. It's very exciting to see, and it's great for other people to go on and have a look at what other people have done, because then they can be proud of their own actions as well, that they are also, you know, putting in their wee part to help. So the goal was to restore a total of 15 hectares across the city, managed to get 16, which was great. It was funded by the National Heritage Lottery Fund, so big thank you to them, and also was match funded by White Mountain Programme and many others, and you can find further details on that on the Buglife page. So as we've heard, there's 102 bee species in Ireland. 77 of them are sultry bees, which inhabit a range of habitats in Belfast. This can be from meadows to parks to water bodies like the River Lagan and higher terrain like the Belfast Hills. This initiative supported some of the more threatened species, such as the Goodin's nomad bee, the grey banded mining bee, and the cryptic woodwhite, amongst many other insects which are all essential for pollination of both wildflowers and also crops if we want to eat as well, which, you know, I like doing that. So the Goodin's nomad bee can be found in a variety of habitats. So this can be woodland, coasts, inland. It's the most common nomad bee in urban areas. Although despite being widespread in Britain, the records are more localised when in Ireland. The grey banded mining bee is quite distinctive. It's got a widespread distribution, but it's still rather local in Ireland. It's common where it occurs though, which is good. So we want it to spread a bit more by connecting these habitats. The cryptic woodwhite is of a medium priority and it is widespread, but only occurs in small areas. So, due to the wide range of pollinating insect species found in Northern Ireland, they have a very varied habitat and dietary needs. Most pollinators require nectar and pollen, which emphasizes a need for biodiversity to be a priority when possible. It's not just, you know, one or two species of wildflowers which are around. It's having a whole range of different species across the whole season, which is what helps them, because some insects will come out really early in spring and some are much later in at the end of summer to autumn. So you have to plant a variety of different species to make sure that all of them have places that they can feed from, because some of them are very, very picky, which, you know, can be a problem. And we also need to have shallow water. They'll take drinks. We need bare soil. That's things that people often forget about or leave out. You know, sometimes having people walking through a field can actually be kind of good, because if little paths form in these bare soil areas, this is where you'll have the little bees deciding to build their wee nests. So it's definitely having a wide range of different habitats available for them is what'll increase our biodiversity again. So my project had a range of different aims to help the recovery of the Northern Ireland bees and other insects by restoring these 15 hectares of public accessible wildflower habitats. So this provided wildlife corridors and stepping stones, which enabled them to freely disperse through the surrounding landscape. It also helped to increase awareness of the importance and needs of pollinators. Like whenever I went into schools and community groups and chatted to people and showed people with little bug hunts and things about what they were actually helping to save. So we had a total of 48 different events which engaged 1,800 people during this 2-year project. So it felt really rewarding. It was very nice to talk to loads of people as well. So the sites should be surveyed before habitat work is carried out. This is to check whether the enhancement is actually needed. So maybe it's already brilliant and you don't want to go in and dig up turf and stuff if you've already got a wide variety of species. This would be a waste of your time and money and, you know, affect the insects. So you want to make sure that maybe it could just be a management change, as you've heard before, just like cutting less and make sure that you lift the cuttings away will make sure that the nutrient level is lower, and that will encourage more wildflower growth. So it can be really simple, you know, doing less work. That's what we're trying to promote, you know, put your feet up a bit more and then allow the insects to come back. So yeah, some common wildflower are likely to present not just permitted to flower. If it's cut too much or heavily grazed, then this can really, you know, prevent these flowers that are still in the soil base to come up if they are there. So yeah. Other enhancement methods, the best way can be when the species diversity is very low. If, you know, there's nothing around, if it's been heavily managed for too long, then maybe some intervention of seeding might be useful. So we used eco seeds whenever I was in my project. You can use it through brush harvested seed or green hay, which are great positive methods because you're ensuring that you have species that are actually from you know, the local areas, and you're not taking different variations from different places. Even in England, they might have slightly different flowering seasons, which don't match up with our insects in particular. So that's something to think about. The really local stuff is what you're looking for. This image shows the National Trust, which are collecting and drying the brush harvested seed. EcoSeeds pioneered this method in Ireland in the 1990s, and it uses a gentle rotating brush that leaves the donor plant intact. This method causes minimal disturbance to the existing habitat and allows the area to still be cut for hay. Green hay, well, I didn't use it in this project, but it's also a good method. It involves carrying out a hay cut when as many plants as possible have reduced ripe seed and are immediately transferring the cuttings to the prepared donor site. The hay is then spread out and shaken, trampled or rolled in to increase seed to soil contact. Bringing the hay with the seed is believed to help the fungal microzoa to colonize the new site, but it does need to be carried out quickly in suitable weather conditions in one day to avoid the hay beginning to rot. So it's a little bit more time pressured. So there are different things to think about which seeds you would want to use. So where suitable donor sites for the previous methods are not present, the best methods to enhance a meadow is using locally sourced meadow mix and using perennials rather than like cornfield annuals, as we wish to create plant communities which mimic the native flower-rich grassland and are self-sustaining year after year with the correct management. Poppies and cordon flowers are typically found as arable weeds rather than permanent grassland. They require disturbance or replanting each year, so aren't suitable for permanent meadows, and also create this expectation to people that meadows should always be bright and colorful, which then can create disappointment to people, or they can complain to think, oh, that's not a meadow anymore because they've disappeared. So those are sort of things you want to watch out for. And you could also use plug plants, but they need some aftercare and protection from rabbits and other herbivores that will go ahead and try and eat them. So 2 sites that I did with my project, I hired EcoSeeds to cut the grass very short in Clement Wilson Park and Laganlands East, and this reduced competition from grasses that were already in the field before sowing a meadow mix. The Laganlands area was also sown with a mix of locally brush harvested seed from Ballymena. The seeds selected for these sites were local native seeds. They were chosen to accommodate with the local invertebrates that were adapted to prefer these species of plants, and the flowering times should align with the emergence of the invertebrates. It was also important to ensure that the plants chosen were suitable for the soil type, the soil pH, nutrient level, and also the dampness of the site. So I don't know what we would do without our great volunteers. They were definitely crucial in this project. We improved many of the areas with 53 conservation volunteers overall by planting yellow rattle. Yellow rattle is a great plant. It's a hemiparasitic plant that obtains some of its food from grasses and other plants. So this is brilliant to keep the grass growth low, and this allows more space for native wildflowers to come up. So it should sort of help to reduce the grass a bit, which is definitely beneficial for bees that aren't, grass doesn't give them pollen or nectar. They need more wildflowers. I held my first event with the National Trust to sow yellow rattle in Minnoburn, and we used rakes, which worked well to create bare ground, and then buckets to distribute the seed between the volunteers. A lot of hard work to spread the yellow rattle. And then I used the same method across 14 more hectares, across various Belfast City Council sites, including Belmont Park and Barnet, Demansay. We always aim to sow the seed in November, as the yellow rattle needs the cold winter months to help germination in the spring. So species-rich grasslands can be maintained or restored using the following management techniques. They benefit from grasslands do benefit from some management, as rank vegetation will hinder new growth of wildflowers and eventually reduce the species diversity. If you cut in late summer after flowering or carry out extensive grazing with low stocking densities between August to November, remove the stock if the ground is too wet. This avoids poaching and compaction. If you remove grazing during the main growing season, May to July, or graze only lightly, it allows plants to flower and set seed. Try and avoid feeding livestock in species-rich grassland, which leads to heavily poached ground and colonization of weed species. Wildflowers need to grow in nutrient-poor soil, so avoid the application of chemical fertilizers. If you remove the grass cutting, it prevents the nutrients from re-entering. Removing gorse scrub and young trees if they're spreading far too quickly, because you don't want them to dominate. And where historically rich grasslands have been degraded through agricultural improvements, consider a cutting regime or spreading patches with yellow rattle. Another great thing we did in the project was putting in bee banks. Bee banks are often found in nature where a river cuts into a bank, or where sheep or rabbits make small cuttings in the hillside. These nesting features, however, are often lacking in more urban and agricultural landscapes, and so can be constructed to provide invaluable nesting and basking sites for bees, butterflies, beetles, and much, much more. Bee banks are created with a hard-core gravel base and sand topping. This sand allows ground nesting bees to find a soft and firm area in the sunlight, and they dig little holes where they nest and put their little larvae in the bottom. And then it also creates a great ecosystem as nomad bees come along. They're cuckoo bees, and they'll try and get in there before the bees and lay their egg in there as well. I also gave educational presentations, like to Belfast City Council site managers in Tullycarnet, and we discussed how best to manage areas for pollinators, as they're responsible for maintaining the Belfast buzzing sites for the next 10 years. So we chatted about the importance of biodiversity and planting native wildflowers, or letting it grow up itself. We discussed potential complaints from the public and different ways that we could answer them. And then we had an outdoor session where we planted some yellow rattle and did some litter picking, which was good fun. I also set up a pledge scheme to encourage people to have a diversity of habitats in their gardens. It's part of a Belfast Buzzing Pack produced for the project, and it had a wide range of suggestions on how to improve your own gardens for pollinators. It can still be donated from, downloaded, sorry, from the Buglife website, and I definitely encourage you to go and check it out because it gives you lots of little hints and tips for how to do all these things in this picture here, and you can also have a excellent garden area. So weeds are brilliant for pollinators, as you've heard before. There's a range of different species, as you can see in these pictures, from bees, the hoverflies, bumblebees, everything that loves these flowers. And so we want to encourage people to change their mindsets from oh, it has to be nice, you know, bright, colorful flowers that are bought in from America, for example, whereas our really exciting, you know, weeds that we have here are really exciting whenever you see how much activity will come onto it. And if they regenerate themselves, then it's less effort for you as well. So to conclude, it was a successful project and the event targets were successfully achieved with a total of 48 events, talks, pop-up stands and landworks, and a total of 1,900, over 900 then, people were involved who were introduced to pollinators and their importance in the environment and how they can help them in a range of different means. And it was very successful as we restored 16 hectares of land for insect pollinators by working with the National Trust and Belfast City Council. So all in all, a good project, which I really enjoyed being a part of. I'm now involved, a quick plug, as every good project person should do, in a 5-year project with Buglife funded by the Environmental Fund, Derry and NIEA now, which aims to increase entomology activities across coastal sites of Northern Ireland through engaging citizen science events, school sessions and supporting volunteers to undertake single and multi-species transects. So this project, the Northern Ireland Coastal Invertebrates Project is its official title, will work towards providing a minimum of 5 species recovery plans for our most threatened invertebrates, which spans across all taxonomic groups from bees to mollusks and spiders, including there. In addition to this, 2 hectares of habitat, including different grasslands, sand dunes, salt marsh will be created or restored per year. And this links in with the Beelines network as well, including like the Ulster Way. So if anyone would like to get involved with the project, it's currently looking for areas which can be improved for habitat. We have some funding available as well, so just get in touch. I have my email included in the next slide, but massive funders to all the a massive thanks to all the funders and also everyone who was listening. Thank you.
That's great, Hannah. Thank you very much for your presentation. I think anyone that's met you knows your enthusiasm towards engaging communities and invertebrates and turning the ooh into something really, really positive. And, you know, new 15 hectares across the city now, 16, sorry, that are now available. Yeah, brilliant presentation. Thank you so much for that. Anyone who has any questions for Hannah or indeed wants to get involved in our new project, great opportunity to plug there, to get in touch with Hannah. Right, I'd like to now hand over to our next speaker, and again, just put any questions that you have in the QA panel at the bottom of the page. Okay, I'd like to hand over to Rachel Bain from Derry City and Strabane District Community. Would you like to share your presentation, Rachel? Thank you very much.
I would, but the computer says no. It's frozen.
Oh dear. Let's see if Amy can come in and help there. Amy, are you able to help out?
Let's see. Is that better?
Oh, there we are.
There
No,
we go. Yeah,
there you are. I'll leave you
I think
to it. Thanks,
yeah.
Rich.
Perfect. Hi, I am the Biodiversity Officer for Derry and Strabane District Council. I've only been in post for about 5 months here, so I'm going to share with you a little bit of what my predecessor Christine did in her green infrastructure and her pollinator plans and her links with the All Ireland Pollinator Plan, and then the links with the Don't Mow, Let It Grow project, which Una quite generously said was mine, but there was many more people involved, and just share with you where it's going on to from now. So Christine actually developed one of the first green infrastructure plans for Northern Ireland, looking at both the green and blue woodlands, greenways, parks, rivers, to try and integrate it into the policy and decision making of Derry and Strabane Council. And it assessed, looked at 4 key strategic themes: people in place, biodiversity, climate change, economic prosperity, whilst also looking at the cross-cutting themes of health and well-being, community engagement, and natural capital, with the most thing being to try and get the full potential of the green infrastructure for people in place, and be resilient and respond to climate change. I don't need to tell anybody about ecosystem services because being the last up, we've already been there. So the council, as Una said, that now all the councils on the island of Ireland have signed up to the All Ireland Pollinator Plan, which is fantastic. So Derry and Strabane signed up to the pollinator plan, and through that then wrote their own pollinator plan, which then linked back to the biodiversity elements of the green infrastructure plan. And their main focus was making public land friendly for pollinators and raising awareness of how to protect and look after them and engage other people within the green infrastructure network, to also look more into the pollinator, how they can manage their pollinator plans. So as a result of all of this, the council pollinator plan wanted to increase the area of council land that was managed in a pollinator friendly way. Christine did this by, first of all, looking at the large parks, and this is Derry City. And within Derry City, they're very lucky to have large green spaces. So they were looking at large parks that could accommodate areas of more than a hectare, to turn into don't mow habitats and grasslands to manage as more native grasslands. So through this network space, which links in with the whole ethos of beelines as well, they created over 11 meadows within the city parks, highlighted here in the light green. And this management change started in 2021. Then they also moved on to, well, we've got cemeteries as well. So 23 of the district's cemeteries, and this map shows the Derry and Strabane area. So 23 of the cemeteries that were being managed by the council are now also managed in a pollinator friendly way with reduced cutting, whether it be a reduced frequency or just an annual cut. And in fact, I was out looking at some of the older cemeteries and figuring out just about a couple of weeks ago whether some of them could actually be grazed. So there's many different ways, as well as the cut and lift. There's different opportunities to manage for our pollinators. So, and as part of the green infrastructure plan as well, we try and work with other stakeholders that are doing green infrastructure projects, work with community groups, and show them the benefits of incorporating don't mow within their projects, and the benefits of natural meadows. As Una said, we don't want the showy, we want the change of management to make the difference. And it also makes it very, very cost effective as well, because there's cost savings involved. And as also previously mentioned, there's the potential of carbon storage. So it's very easy to show the value of ecosystem services provided to our estate through changing of the management. So the Don't Mow, Let It Grow. This is Derry and Strabane's Culmore Park, which is an old landfill site, and their Amazon mower. So Christy and I actually worked together on this project, sharing the Don't Mow, Let It Grow project across the Northwest councils. So it originated within Causeway Coast and Glens when I was working there, and we shared it widely. We let it grow to wander and be free, like the bees, just to go and spread. So through this partnership of the local authorities collectively, which would have been Causeway Coast and Glens, Fermanagh and Omagh, Derry and Strabane and Mid-Ulster councils, by 2021, there was over 90 hectares of grasslands being managed in a Don't Mow, Let It Grow style for the benefit of our pollinators. And as mentioned before, the green desert, as I like to call it, where grass is mown within an inch of his life, is no good for the bees, but we were able to create this vast area, this vast network of sustainable wildflower meadows across the council areas collectively. This also, we were able to show significant cost savings for the councils, which also allowed for redeployment of staff to carry out other parks and green spaces work, because they weren't being having to cut the grass so frequently. A lot of the grass was then taken off in green skips in Derry and Strabane. It would have gone into green skips and then sent off with their recycling waste or green waste. In Causeway Coast and Glens, we were very lucky to have our own green recycling centre. So the waste and the grass clippings from there went to our own composting facility. So I'll now just give you a wee whiz through some of the key elements of the original Don't Mow project. Noel Davron, who I see is on the list of participants, is the parks manager for Causeway Coast and Glens Borough Council, and he now manages the Don't Mow sites within the Causeway Coast, and has continued to do so after the end of the project. So the key elements that helped us change this type of management was community engagement was one of the key. So while this might have been a biodiversity project, at its heart, it was all about engaging with the community, showing the difference, using the signages, getting the volunteers in, and finding roles for everybody, getting an interest for everybody to participate in the project, and changing mindsets, but also allowing people to come forward and say, yes, we do enjoy this as well. So part of it was training for land managers within the council and within the road service, who were all also part of this project. It was not only changing the grassland management, but it was also reducing the spread of invasive species through inadvertently cutting them. So it was identifying that as well as changing the grassland management. And it took sometimes a bit of persuasion, because they've always cut these sites, to change the cutting regime, but it was well worth it, and the results were fantastic. we did survey training and ID training for the volunteers, and we did habitat management. So several scythe training events, and I was always very happy with the sigh of relief at the end of the scythe training events, where everybody went away with 10 fingers and 10 toes. But they proved one of the most popular training opportunities that we offered. And through all this, small changes made huge benefits. And all of these pictures are from our sites, you know, and as Una said, you change it and they will come. You know, it just takes a very small change. You provide the habitat again, you provide the wildflowers, and everything comes back. So, and various methods of management as well to do this. It's not rocket science. Cows, brilliant. The Amazon moors, fantastic. They were a game changer, big cut and lift machines. We had silage contractors. So the big picture down the bottom here is a silage contractor in a park in Ballymoney town centre. So, and our slope mower, a remote control slope mower, and our scythe out doing another section of the Ballymoney Park. All manners and any way you can just to get that cut and lift done is fantastic. As I said at the start, engagement was crucial, and so there was a huge PR campaign, and we attended lots of public events, and the key to that was it wasn't just environmental events where you're talking to the converted. We went to places like the Air Show and the Salmon and Whiskey Festival, so that you were trying to reach as many and as wide-ranging an audience as you possibly can. A dedicated website so that all the project partners could put whatever up there, and to leave the legacy. So all the resources, everything that we did, the branding, the cost benefit analysis, the economic appraisal, everything is up there as a resource to share. A dedicated Facebook page, which Donna Rainey still manages to this day. And she is one of the driving forces behind the project and a key volunteer. And Busy Flow and Friends, which was or is animated, short animated films with Busy Flow for primary school teachers, along with teachers' notes, so that the teachers actually know how to use it. So engagement was the key. And then as part of this, the public perception survey, and through this public perception survey, we were able to show that there was a need for this. There was a embracing of the project, that it wasn't just me and a few other people, that the wider community were embracing this long grass. It allowed us to show that not everybody wants a bowling green. So in addition to the cost savings that we were able to show the council through the economic appraisal, we were also able to show the benefits for the wider community, the benefits for people wanting to come and see this kind of thing in our area. So you could see the tourism benefits of it as well. So that the public perception survey was key, and has allowed Noel to continue to manage the Don't Mow, Let It Grow sites, and add new sites, and purchase additional cut and lift machinery after the funding period is over. So in a quick summary, for Derry and Strabane, the council's pollinator plan, it helps deliver national and international policies. The green infrastructure approach to create a nature recovery network, and to deliver the All Ireland pollinator plan and bee lines. And we're currently working with Butterfly Conservation to develop a wild spaces project in the Derry and Strabane area as well, which will also add into all these networks. It's a great example of green infrastructure delivering for biodiversity, climate change, green spaces, food, health and well-being. And the partnership makes all the difference. The partnership within the councils, the partnership between councils, the partnership with all our other organisations, Buglife, All Ireland Pollinator Plan, Butterfly Conservation. Basically, anybody who'll work with us will work with. And with this partnership approach, we have a huge chance of creating and changing big areas of land for the benefit of biodiversity, for the benefit of humans. The council in 2020 had 6.5 million visitors coming to its estate. So, if even a fraction of those are looking at the Don't Mow, Let It Grow sites and go, oh, that's a very interesting way, or seeing new butterflies and bumblebees or whatever, and not running off in the other direction screaming, but actually running into the meadows to enjoy it, then that makes all the difference. And the natural capital and the ecosystem services, there was a study done within Derry, and that change in grassland management is worth over 7,000 a year for pollinators alone, and that's just one small area and one small part. So by able to do this, there's multiple sustainable benefits for biodiversity, for climate, for health and well-being. And, it's all of us here and all of the speakers, we're all doing a little bit, which is making a big difference. Small changes do make big differences. So, and that's me.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And I've got to disagree with you there. I think you're doing a huge bit from that presentation. And I did also spend most of the time waiting for you to say, don't mow, let it grow. But yeah, absolutely fantastic. And kind of introducing that idea again of carbon storage as an ecosystem service is something that, we need to talk about it as well. And also just not talking just to the converted, and get out of that safe space and help people understand. But anyway, this is not about me, but thank you very much for a fantastic presentation. So just a reminder here that the chat has not been working, but now it is open again. But I would like to start off with some questions that have come in for our panelists. If the panelists wouldn't mind putting their cameras on, if that's possible. And yeah, the first question I think can go out to them all, and it is one that comes up a lot, and we've had some interesting answers to it and to some inventive solutions. I'm going to say arisings, because often with the work across the council, they say, well, what do we do with the arisings? And there's been multiple suggestions, but it always seems to be a bit of a thorn in the side. And I'm just wondering if anyone would like to respond to that question from the panel.
I'll jump in first. As I say, in Causeway, we were very lucky to have our own green waste facility. So a lot of the arisings that were close to that went directly there. Grazing, you don't have to worry about the arisings, which is another great one. And we were also lucky to be able to link some farmers to a few of the sites. So we actually then got the sites cut for free, and they took away the bales as fodder. And the farmers actually really liked that, because it was such a balanced diet, if you like. It wasn't like feeding them silage, which I equate to McDonald's. It was, a lovely, herb-rich, balanced diet. So that was another option. And in Derry and Strabane, they would bring green waste skips into some of the bigger sites, and where possible, they would find a discrete area in other sites to basically pile up their cuttings, which is not as ideal down in the south of England, where they do that. They have the weather conditions where it disappears quickly. Here, we're kind of a bit colder and a bit wetter, and so it just becomes a slimy pool. It takes much longer to get rid of. So yes, arisings are an issue, but there are many ways to get around it. And when anybody asks me if they want to do it and they say, oh, I've got an acre, I'll go do that. And you look at their little lawnmower and I say, well, maybe start with a little bit and see how you go, before you go mad.
Oh, it's a great question. So basically a lot about, collaboration and seeing what opportunities are out there at the same time. Some great examples there. Thanks, Rachel. Does anyone else from the panel want to come in on that at all? No. Okay, because I've got a few questions coming in here, so I'll just go on to the next one. So I've got one here. It says, are bug hotels a good option? I've heard differing opinions on these. The panelists like to answer that question.
Yeah,
Rachel Richards.
Happy to comment on that. Hi, I'm Beelines Officer for Buglife. Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it depends what you mean by a bug hotel as well, because I would differentiate between a bug hotel and a bee hotel. So in a lot of schools and community groups, people sort of make these, piles of wood and fir cones and things like that. And that, of course, will support different invertebrates to a bee hotel where you want cavities for nesting bees. So I think a bug hotel is quite good to use at a school where you can kind of pull it apart every now and then. And, it's an engagement tool for finding invertebrates and creating habitat. If you're putting it in a woodland, the chances are you've already got that habitat there, but maybe in a school ground, you don't have a lot of habitat and it's something that the kids can get involved in and identify invertebrates. A bee hotel is for cavity nesting bees, and you have different size holes in them. You can use hollow plant stems of different thicknesses or wood that you drill holes in. And that nesting habitat can be really valuable. And I'm sure Una will tell you they've created nesting habitat on farms, ground nesting, and aerial nesting. So features like that are often lacking on farms, often lacking in the country, well, in some countryside. So they could be good nesting features. But you need to put them somewhere sunny. You don't want them down on the ground. I would do them separately to a bug hotel. In a bug hotel, you might have lots of predators like spiders and the like, in the same construction that you've got your bees nesting in. So yeah, I think bee hotels are great. Again, there's different ways of doing them, and we've got some advice on those. If you have the hollow stems in, you might want to swap them out every so many years because they do get full up. And there's advice on sort of how to do that. But yeah, good for engagement, good for people to observe the invertebrates and different hole nesting bees coming and going, and useful habitat where they're lacking in nature as well. A few thoughts anyway, others may have different thoughts.
Great, thanks, Rachel. Does anybody else want to comment?
I can come in briefly, but I think Rachel's covered it really well. Yeah, I suppose when it comes to wild bee nests, and we always say like the best thing is just to create some bare soil, because most of our solitary bees nest in that way. So if there's an area of your garden where you can create bare soil, that's a fantastic thing to do, and they'll look after themselves. And then, as Rachel said, the cavity nest and bee hotels can be good. And again, I'm sort of repeating you, Rachel, but like it is really important just to position them properly, to try to have them south or east face, and make sure that there's flowers nearby, because the little solitary bees are not going to fly far from the nest at all to find food. So it's really important, that there's food nearby to the nest for them to use. And then put it up, see what happens. If it's not occupied, put it somewhere else. And as Rachel said, you need to make sure that you swap them out every now and again so that they don't become reservoirs for disease or pests.
But we embrace the cuckoos and things as well. So you get, some really cool cuckoo bees and, parasite species that are really interesting and need food and a place to go as well. So it's all very interesting, great learning opportunity.
Yeah, just watching it become a bird feeder. We had one at work and we put it up, and it was great. I just doing really well. There's loads of solitary bees, little larvae, and then the next thing, the birds discovered it. So blue tits were busy feasting on them. But then what happened was a sparrowhawk came along. Literally, we were watching a sparrowhawk came along and took out the blue tit. So it was all that's nature for you, I suppose.
You can put wire over them, especially if you've got things like woodpeckers. You can put like what's it called, chicken mesh over.
Yeah.
There you
just
go.
Let nature do its thing.
If the balance is right, nature sorts itself out. So, thank you very much, guys. I've got another question that's popped up here. Do the solitaries nest in clay soil, which can get damp? Would anybody like to come in here?
I can take that unless someone else wants to.
Yeah,
go
if
for
you're
it.
there, Una, thank you. And then Rachel maybe come in as well.
Yeah,
But
they'll nest in various different soil types as long as it's pre-draining. So as long as it's not waterlogged, that should be fine. So you do find them, not as much as other soil types, but you can't get them in clay soils. But yeah, free draining is the most important thing.
Yeah, I was going to say different solitary bee species often prefer different soil types. So Nigroenia, I've forgotten its common name now, buffish mining bee. I don't think it's so common in Northern Ireland, but it does nest in quite clay soils. But yeah, it needs to be dry. You know, if it's a flat bit of soggy mud, they're not, you know, that would be stupid. They're not going to nest there. So cuttings or dry areas.
great, thank you very much. If no one else from the panel wants to come in, I'll go into the next question. So how do you disseminate pollinator information or guidance to communities and groups is the first part of the question. And what have you found to be the most effective ways to encourage local action?
I don't want to hog all this answering, but do you want me to?
Go for it, please do. Floor is yours.
We did do this, I suppose. As the first thing I think to say is that when I think back on the pollinator plan, like the most important decision we made was to tailor the resources, you know, so to make sure that there was a resource specifically for local communities, specifically for gardens or farmers or councils or whatever. So that's been really important so that you can pick it up and it's really clear exactly what it is you are being asked to do. And it's written in a way that you would understand given your own setting. So I think that's really important, that the guidance you're providing is tailored to the person that you're trying to target. How we get to different groups. For the other thing I'd say is that it's always what we try to do is always be positive and constructive and largely action focused. So you're always going out to engage with people. You're trying to explain why these bees are so amazing, why they're so important, and then the simple things they can do to help. So it's action focused and it's positive and constructive. After that, we use a lot of peer-to-peer, so trying to get one community or group or whoever who's doing something really positive and then use them to spread that message to others. So that's a far more effective way, you know, than someone like me talking all the time. You know, you're much better at one local community speaking to another. So we do a huge amount of that. And actually Rachel Bain, you know, they don't know that it grows a really good example of that, where Rachel and the others came up with this amazing initiative, you know, and then we're so generous. I don't know how many times Rachel came and talked for us at different councils, you know, across the whole island, and the idea just spread, you know, and that's how you do it, slowly, by being positive and constructive and open to what works and what doesn't work, and realistic about what you can and can't achieve. So I think it's largely that, and also trying not to keep talking to the converted. Like we try really hard to reach new audiences, you know, because sometimes you can fall into a trap of just speaking to people who are already doing it. And it's lovely, it's really lovely, and it's easy to do, but you know, I think you do have to make an effort to get and speak to people, to new audiences.
Great, thanks very much, Una. Does anybody else from the panel want to? Rachel Bain.
Yeah, I just reiterate everything that Una said there. You know, you target the resources, you talk to different people, you engage with other folks that spread it word of mouth, and you have, like, I don't do social media at all, but our Facebook page is fabulous because Donna does social media, you know, so it is about that, is providing an opportunity for everybody who to engage in the way they want to engage, you know, whether it be social media, whether it be website, whether it be coming to a talk at the gardening club or whatever. You are there, accessible. You let them know what doesn't work, what does work. You know, when somebody comes to say to you and says, "Oh, I want to do a hectare of you know, meadow," and you kind of say to them, "Well, do you have a cut and lift, or you know, how are you going to manage that?" So you help them figure out what they can actually do with the resources they have, or what they might need. So if they went off and did a hectare of a meadow and then couldn't cut and lift it, and it all got all patchy and horrible, you know, that kind of spoils the momentum for them. So it's, you know, understanding what's good for somebody and helping that. And I have to say, Donna and myself, you know, we we went the length and the breadth of the country, just chatting to anybody, you know, whether it be other councils or other organisations or just individuals who wanted to do something. And I think often that's the way, you just have to reach out in any way you can, and then it spreads, because then Una has somebody else who goes off and does something else, and you know, it is communicating on a level that they want to, and what they need to do for themselves, you know, very targeted, rather than doom and gloom and we're all going to die and what's the point.
Yeah, that's where you need a mug with "Be Happy" on it, right, Rachel? Perfect. Does anyone else want to come in from the panel on that? If not, I'll go on to the next question. No. Okay, we've got one here. It says, how important is my garden and how can I contribute? We all have an idea of what gardens should look like. In my household, the front garden looks very different from the back. The back one's completely feral, whereas the front is doing the keeping up with appearances. You know, but how important is that in the scheme of things? I don't know if anybody wants to come in here. Hannah.
Yeah, I think that kind of links in with the question before of it's important not to just push the doom and gloom, that like whenever you're talking to people, you can make like a massive difference. We can see the effects that whenever there are wildflowers there, even if it's a smaller amount, it does have a big difference. Like species, whenever they do have extra places to nest or they do have extra places to feed, like they will have their nests and they will increase in numbers. So like having even just a small bit in your own garden, and if loads of people do that, it will have a massive effect. So definitely would push the positive narrative of it does work. You know, we just need to be there for these insects. So don't be thinking, oh, I only have a tiny little area, or I only have enough for one window box. Like even one window box is a few, like 5 or 6 more flowers than was there before. So that could be the difference between a bee flying by and having nothing to eat and dying, or getting a little bit extra to help it along to the next area.
Thanks very much, Hannah. I guess you can always do your own flower insect time counts in your garden to kind of look at the difference it makes yourself and enter it into the program. Rachel?
I was going to say, you just have to compare, you know, a wildlife friendly garden with a very short lawn and very few plants, and, you know, spend 10 minutes in each and you'll see a huge difference. I mean, I'm pretty sure my neighbour is not a huge fan of my gardening style, but I've got quite an overgrown hedge that is loved by a lot of birds. I've got piles of dead wood and logs. I've got bee hotels. I've got a herb garden. I've got an apple tree, a mini meadow, you know, shrubs in the spring and all through the summer. And it's quite a scruffy garden, but that little mini meadow that I've got, you know, it's I don't know, 10 meters by 2 meters, that's full of long grass and wildflowers. I get common skipper, small skipper rather. I get ringlet, I get meadow brown. You know, those butterflies that need, the larvae need the long grasses. You know, it's not just the flowers, but when you have that meadow area in there, you know, the wild native pollinators in nearby meadows will spread into gardens. And you know, I leave a couple of spear thistles out the back of my garden, and that's where those are the plants that are just covered in pollinators, in hoverflies and bumblebees and solitary bees and all sorts. And you know, the herb gardens, even if you've just got space for a small herb garden, you know, things like rosemary and thyme and lavender, they'll just be covered in bees. If there's any invertebrates in the area on a nice day when the sun's out, it'll be an insect magnet. So, and it brings a lot of joy, doesn't it? Just to step out with a cup of tea and see something moving around. But there's a huge amount you can do, however big your space, and actually involves slightly less gardening, a lot more just sitting back and watching.
Thanks very much, Rachel. And that kind of linked to one of the other questions about it being expensive, you know, how what the cost is. And I think we've had some of these questions that have come up before. You know, you look to see what you've got first and see what's coming through. But you don't need to rush out and buy lots of packets of seeds and plants and that. But yeah, I don't know if anyone wants to expand on that a little bit. But
Yeah, I think sometimes if you're wanting to do more with your garden, having a look in your neighborhood and see where are the insects going, you know, talk to your neighbors and see if they're happy to give you a cutting of you know, whatever's popular in their garden. It could be a really good start. And then you're kind of spreading that forage out as well, because a lot of pollinators, you know, will focus on a particular plant for a while, and they'll, well, while that's out in flower, if they can find it in a number of gardens, they've got more forage.
Thanks very much, Rachel. So that's the majority of the questions we got through on the chat, but I would like to say we've all been listening to the presentations, but do the panelists have any questions they would like to kind of put out there? Does anyone else on the panel?
Not a question as such, but more just a reiteration that just a change in management and see what comes, see what grows. When we didn't seed anything into any of the don't mow sites, we didn't spread yellow rattle, we just changed the cutting regime, and we were having bee orchids and you know, some of the sites had hundreds of spikes of orchids and all manner of native grasses were coming back, and insects, and it can change. And going back to the garden, I don't have the picture here, but one of the All Ireland pollinator plants, and I showed that I had a tiny triangle of front garden. You let your back garden go. I had my back garden cut the grass for the dogs, although there was a great big old hedge. But the front garden didn't matter. My neighbours thought I was mad, so it didn't really matter at all. But you know, I had ragged robin and bird's foot trefoil and clovers and all coming up and spreading on this postage stamp with the insect life that came with it. So you know, it doesn't have to cost anything. Just change what you're doing. Just it's all sitting there waiting in the seed bank. And while Donna Rainey, who was the other brainchild of this project, she has a bigger garden. You got thousands of orchids in her garden. She just stopped cutting the grass full stop, and incredible transformation to the diversity and the species of flowers and insects that are in her garden, and also feeding the birds as well. And with Una, I love it when the sparrowhawks come in and you see that hole. So yeah, it doesn't have to cost anything. In fact, it'll save you time and money because you're not out there mowing the lawn every Saturday. You can be just sitting back with your cup of tea and seeing what's going on.
That's
Yeah.
perfect, Rachel.
I couldn't agree more, yeah.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, you know, I often go to look at sites where people want to do work for pollinators, and they're often surprised when you walk around and say, oh, there's lots of wildflowers here already, you know, that we don't need to bring the wildflowers unless you're working with something like a football pitch that has been created in that way. There will generally be wildflowers there waiting to come out when you change the management. So yeah, do survey and have a good look first before you consider throwing seed on anything, and then, you know, take a lot of care over what seed you use. So yeah, definitely agree, Rachel.
Thanks, Rach. I guess as well with the front garden scenario, you know, if you let the middle bit grow, but then just mow around the outside, just a little barrier, you know, it just shows this is actually cared about. I'm doing something about it, and it makes the conversations a much easier, and no falling out with your neighbours, which is always good. So it's been a fantastic event. I'd really like to thank the speakers again, and to Rachel as well, for Richard for pulling all this together. It's the last of our nation's launches, but it's 2:15, and I think unless if there's any more questions, yep, just a thank yous coming through on the chat, then we'll wind up this session. But thank you very much again for your time.